So good evening, everyone. I'm just going to say a few words about tomorrow before we get on with tonight's schedule. So tomorrow is New Year's Eve, the last day of 2021. So we're going to be marking that. And for tomorrow, the three sessions, the 7 a.m., the 11 a.m. and the 4 p.m. sessions will be all meditation sessions. So we won't have the groups at the 11, or there won't be a talk or groups at 11 a.m. We'll have a chance to dive deeper into our meditation practice. But there will be groups in the evening for as part of the New Year's Eve celebration. There'll be groups in the evening. The evening session will start at 8:30 p.m. So tomorrow will be a session of meditation practice, 7 a.m., 11 a.m. and 4 p.m. So 3 sessions. And usually if you're on retreat physically, we'd have a day of silence. So I know we're all under different circumstances, but I'd encourage you as much as possible to make the most of the kind of quiet space tomorrow if you can. Obviously, we're all in different spaces with different people, but bringing a sense of silence to your day as much as possible tomorrow in preparation for letting go of 2021 and kind of diving in to 2022, so to speak. And with that, we're going to have a chance to reflect, to look back at 2021 and kind of look at anything we regret or want to let go of from 2021. Also, what we want to kind of carry forward into 2022. So looking back at regrets, but also the kind of positive elements of 2021, and then also having a look forwards into the new year. So if you have a couple of pieces of paper to write regrets and also what we want to carry forward and what we're looking to create in 2022. What you could, if you could have them beside your meditation space. As you practice, things might bubble up and you want to note them down or have a notebook handy. Yeah. And we'll go into more detail tomorrow. And there is a suggestion, if you don't have a personal shrine, of trying to create a shrine for yourself. Usually a shrine is an image of a Buddha, a Bodhisattva, a candle, a flower and some incense. But you can just work with what you have, a stone that you like the look of, a nightlight or a branch that you like the look of, a piece of holly or something like that. So creating a kind of something that symbolizes your aspirations. And if you can, have something white on the shrine, if you can. So creating a shrine, if possible. And I think that's all for tomorrow. There will be groups, but the groups will be in the evening, if I didn't say that already. And we'll go into more detail tomorrow about that. Okay, and the main thing is just kind of having something to write on, 2 pieces of paper, and having a sense of looking back and looking forward. I was just looking at chat. Yeah.
It says hello there. Would you say again what the 3 questions are? Thank you.
The 3 questions of what you want to let go of from 2021. What you want to carry forward, so in a way the artacharyas of 2021, the beneficial activities you were engaged in 2021, and then looking to 2022, what kind of year do you want? Looking at the positive qualities you want to develop, the positive habits you want to develop. So looking back at regrets, looking back at positive actions, and then looking forward at what kind of year do you want to have. So that's all about tomorrow. So hopefully that's clear enough. If not, you can always put something, if you have any questions, you can put them in the chat. But tonight we have another story. The stories have been fantastic, and I've been really enjoying them. Today Jnanadhara gave us an inspiring talk about Artacharya beneficial activity, and now we're going to hear from Jyotika a story around that theme. So over to you, Jyotika.
Okay, so I'm afraid I don't have a fireplace. Well, I do have a fireplace, but it's slightly broken. It's a gas fireplace, and it just doesn't really work properly, so it just wouldn't really have the same effect. So you just have me and my shrine. but hopefully that will suffice for this evening. So I was asked to give a story, tell a story from our tradition about beneficial activity. And the minute I read the email from Pavara, I felt, okay, what will I tell about beneficial activity? And I immediately felt sentimental. Okay. Because I could see in my mind's eye somebody doing something really selfless, helping somebody who is suffering. And that kind of thing usually makes me want to cry. And I thought, well, we won't get very far if I tell that kind of story. And I'll just look like a bit of an ass sitting here with tears in my eyes. But then I researched beneficial activity a little bit more, and I came across a quote by none other than Samgrahavastus, who said that Arthacharya means doing whatever helps people spiritually, whatever helps them to attain to higher and higher levels of being and consciousness. And as Yanadara so eloquently unfolded this morning, it's so often about our inspiration and sharing our inspiration. And I thought, well, in our tradition, which could be the Buddhist tradition or the Triratna Buddhist tradition, there's tons and tons of stories of people sharing inspiration. And I could probably tell one of those stories and not cry or get sentimental. Not that I only cry when I'm sentimental, of course, but I could tell one of those stories. And in telling one of those stories, I could also hopefully share some of the inspiration or insights that took place. So the story begins in the summer of 1984. Some of you mightn't have been born then, but in England, in the UK, Sangharakshita and about 20 other men set off, not all together, in small different groupings from different parts of the UK, but their destination was the same, and that was to Tuscany in Italy, and in particular to Il Convento di Santa Croce. So this was a Franciscan monastery, probably from the medieval times, where monks attempted to live a Christian ideal as according to their founder, Saint Francis. The monastery was sacked during the Napoleonic Wars, and it was then used mostly for agricultural activities until 1984, when the owner would lease it to Sangharakshita and others, and they would have, perhaps ironically, the Franciscans perhaps turning in their graves, a Buddhist retreat, and men would get ordained. And I checked it out this afternoon online, and it's now a boutique hotel, very fancy, looks smashing, big for the wedding market. So yeah, the purpose of the journey was that 16 or 17 of the men were going to get ordained into the Triratna Buddhist order during a long retreat. So it was a spiritual journey. It was a leaving behind an old way of being and embracing and publicly declaring a set of values and ideals that they'd made and were wanting to make central to their lives. Geographically, it was a journey from east to west, from the UK across to Tuscany. And that's always a journey towards the light and the rising sun. It was also a geographical journey from the cold north to the warm south. And internally, it was a renunciation of all that was ignorant and hateful and greedy to the embracing of the lights of love and wisdom. So it's very much a journey of bringing darkness into light. And as we know, retreats can be like this, especially if we really give ourselves to them. Before the retreat begins, though, in this summer of 1984, Sangharakshita decides he wants to tour around Renaissance northern Italy. And he focuses in particularly the Pisa area. And he visits the Campo Santo and is mesmerized by the frescoes there, particularly by the Triumph of Death. And alongside the Triumph of Death is Saint Macarius, who represents a spiritual path. And this fresco reminds him very much of the Buddhist 4 sites that Varabandhu spoke to us a couple of nights ago. Alongside the Campo Santo, he visited the National Museum of St. Matthew, the cathedral in Pisa, the Museum of Sinopias, and many other churches, cathedrals, and galleries in this area. And on the trip, and a previous one he did before, he saw several dozen original paintings of St. Jerome. And this figure makes a very deep impression on him. It's like it begins to speak to him, to call to him, to get him to see even more paintings, even going out of his way to see them, regardless of the quality of the work. The more paintings he sees of this figure, the more affinity he feels with him. And the paintings then take on a significance that transcends even their place as works of art. And so by the time he arrives at Il Convento for the retreat, Saint Jerome is very much with him, and he follows him in. So I'm just going to show a little picture of Saint Jerome. So Saint Jerome was one of the founding fathers of the church. You can all see that, by the way? Great. He was one of the 4 founding fathers of the church. He lived in the 4th and 5th centuries. He was a contemporary of St. Augustine's, who was also one of the 4 founding fathers of the church. And he's famous mostly now for translating the Bible, the whole of the Bible, from Greek and Hebrew into Latin. And he's depicted in Renaissance art in his cell, sometimes in the desert, but often in his cell with a book. You see some glasses down here, and always with a skull. There's usually an hourglass, I don't see it this one, and the lion, his cardinal's hat, and a crucifix. So the skull representing death and impermanence, time is working against him. He's got this enormous task. The lion represents the taming of his animal nature and the transformation and sublimation of those energies so that he can focus with great intensity at this work. And the cardinal's hat hung up on the wall, he's let go of worldly activities for the time period. And he's just buried deep in this work of translating the Bible. So this is the picture and the image that begins to take over and really captivate Sangharakshita's heart and imagination. And just show another little image with it. So this is quite a famous image of Sangharakshita himself. Oh, didn't that come up? It's not working. Okay, we'll have to do without that one. Anyway, there's a famous image of Sangharakshita in his study.
You can see that, Jyotika.
You could? That's not coming up on mine. Oh, that's strange. That's weird. Okay, you can see that of Sangharakshita. St. Jerome's come back up on mine. So anyway, it's just here, there is Sangharakshita focused on these papers, writing, translating. Okay. Bald as well, not bearded. So St. Jerome lived in Rome, which was the seat of the established church, and then he went to Bethlehem, and he lived very much on his own. He had some helpers, but he spent years of labor translating this great Christian book. And as Sangharakshita was soaking in or being pulled into the world of St. Jerome, the image of the angel also began captivating his imagination. And he saw them everywhere in Renaissance Italy. And angels can represent different levels of consciousness. And there are very clear parallels because there's a hierarchy in the Christian tradition. And there's very clear parallels between Buddhist and Christian perspectives in this area. So in Buddhism, there's said to be three main levels of consciousness, each succeeding one higher, more subtle and expansive than the last. So we have the level or realm of sense desire, sense consciousness, then the archetypal realm, the Rupa Loka, and then the formless or Arupa Loka, which is extremely subtle state and is linked, not completely, but linked to a degree with transcendental insight. And the angels in the Christian tradition, given their hierarchies, can represent the stratification of levels of consciousness. And this too struck Sangharakshita deeply. So as the ordination retreat gets going, Sangharakshita finds he can't stop thinking about angels and St. Jerome. And he reflects how St. Jerome was the wise old man. He was one of Jung's archetypes of the collective unconscious. He was the alchemist supreme, rendering the word of God into ordinary speech, rendering that which was hidden in the depths and bringing it into the light. But what was he to do? Here he was leading a Buddhist retreat, preparing to ordain men into a Buddhist order. He was the founder of this order, and he was going to be the men's preceptors. And yet he was communing and experiencing a deep connection with Christian angels and with one of the four founding fathers of the Catholic Church. Well, what he does is engage in Arthacharya. He gathers everyone together and he begins to share his experience and inspiration. He tells them how he's become arrested by St. Jerome and what St. Jerome represents. A translator of one culture to another, from one language to another. For St. Jerome, it's the Bible, the great Christian book. But to Bhante, this simply represents the book as a symbol of knowledge and culture, the symbol of knowledge and culture. The book as the symbol is that which brings light to where there's been darkness. The book of knowledge, which he's interpreting for a Western audience, making what we were ignorant of, which is the Buddhist East, into something that's clear and decipherable. And he continues to share with everyone how St. Jerome was a figure in the wilderness, often depicted in the desert or always in a cell on his own, and how this can often be the fate of the translator, working alone. What he didn't tell everyone, because he wasn't a moaner, he didn't complain about things, but which was true, was that his own life could be extremely demanding. He had no peers, no one to share his load with once he came back to the UK. He founded this community and everyone looked to him for guidance. Hundreds, thousands of people in Britain, in India, in America, Australia, wherever Triratna spread to. And this at times must have been an extremely lonely place to be. He himself was from a very ordinary family, very solid, working class, East End Londoners. None had airs or graces. They were extremely down to earth. I know a woman, Padmashuri, an order member, who got to know Sangharajita's mother, got to know her quite well. And she said she had no idea, she'd never any idea of what Sangharajita had created. To her, she was just her Dennis. And as he continued to share at Il Convento, he drew out important things for the men about to get ordained. Through his own experience, exemplification, and inspiration, he shows how Buddhist spiritual practice can become a process of revelation in the most mysterious of ways. It can be a revelation of a particular myth, for instance, like a way of being in the world, an activity that moves us deeply, or the emergence of a particular figure into one's heart and psyche that's beyond reason. And once revealed to us, they give shape to our lives in very unexpected ways, and sometimes unwanted ways, but sometimes we have to listen to them. And he shows how Buddhist spiritual practice can bring forth that which wants and needs to emerge from within, and that this is deeply important. Buddhist spiritual practice isn't all about developing strengths we don't have yet, or about getting away from ourselves, or thinking that we're broken or essentially messed up and damaged. It sees human experience, our particular experience, much more positively than that. Buddhist spiritual practice is a process of transformation, but the gold we're trying to transform into isn't hidden somewhere deep in the desert or the bottom of the ocean that's external and we have to find. It's hidden within. And images and myths and stories can help us to discover how it takes particular form and shape in us. And so Sangharajita uses his own experience to show how art has been enriching and guiding his inner life, how it's full of myths and stories and figures that inspire him and teach him things about his own life. And though St. Jerome and the angel are Christian, they represent for Sangharajita archetypes of universal significance that are only clothed in Christian Renaissance and Italian image, but ultimately transcend these things. And in this, he teaches the men at Il Convento that their Buddhist spiritual practice is within their own Western culture, and that this culture also contains many gold nuggets that can shine forth and guide us in the path of transformation. And we shouldn't be afraid of this. We're Westerners, and we're building Sangha here. And the land we build on is our cultural heritage, and we need to value it, know it, deeply appreciate it, learn from it, use what useful building materials it has for the development of Sangha. And it has many. And finally, through his sharing, Bhante expresses how his appreciation of art and the figure of St. Jerome in particular has allowed him to move beyond the realm or consciousness level of sense desire into a more expansive state in which he feels an affinity and deep connection with others who have done as he's doing, translating and interpreting, so that he feels he's not really alone. The path he is on can be very demanding, but others have traversed it before him, and others will after too. And he gains strength and comfort from this. And this is something we can remember as well. Though it can feel a lonely and strange place to be at times, this being drawn to and inspired by the Buddha's teaching in Ireland in 2021, we're not alone. Millions are doing it globally, and millions will do it in times to come. And there are millions of people out there who are ready for the Dharma, but haven't come across it yet, merely by dint of circumstance, because they haven't been exposed to it. It's as simple as that. And if they were exposed to it, it could transform their lives and relieve much suffering. We're here benefiting from the activity and inspiration of others. But we too can help others in turn. We all have inspiration. We're all on the path. And the path has much to teach us. So, I will end here, leaving the scene of Bhante sharing with the other men into the night at Il Convento. And I'll leave us with a question. After this retreat, what will you do with your inspiration?